What's going on YouTube? It's Teach back again with another video, and today giving you the third round portion of my updated 2023 three-round NFL mock draft. Before we get started, I'll go ahead and showcase the best players still on the board so that way you can see who is available. But nonetheless, if you missed round 1 or round 2, be sure to go back and check out those videos. Also, you can get an update of who's been taken to what team down here in the bottom right. But nonetheless, hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, be sure to hit that like button. It seriously would help me out a ton. If you're right here, want to see more draft content, more football content in general, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, the most important thing to do today is who is your favorite team, and comment your thoughts about this draft haul for your favorite squad down below in the comment section. I'll respond to just about every comment as long as you are not completely a dick. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and jump into round 3, starting with the Chicago Bears taking Derick Hall. I said in yesterday's video, him, Will McDonald, I see very similarly. These speed rushers right around the same size and height. They can go to the same spot on the draft board. I just had it playing out a little different. Also comes down to what your NFL team is looking for 3-in, 3-4, speed, power rusher, all that sort of stuff. So Hall falls a little bit, but for the Bears, trying to reinvigorate that edge group, pair him up with Tre'Davious Gibson. I think that's a really nice pairing. You took Jalen Carter at 4, starting to workshop and get some headway with that front 7. Next is the Houston Texans at 65. I'm going to give him Gervon Dexter. Kind of an interesting player because it's always flashes. It's not not even full games that it's like, wow, there's Gervon Dexter. He's going crazy. It's kind of plays here and there. Maybe it's a series here and there, but just not consistent. So that he's kind of a tough player for me to mock. I've had him go all the way as far as outside the top 100 last week, but here I got him going 65 because if there's a guy to get the best out of Gervon Dexter, DeMeco Ryans might be the dude. And we saw in San Francisco then prioritize that interior defensive line play, like an Eric Armstead, and before that, a DeForest Buckner. So taking a Gervon Dexter here at 65 could be solid value depending on how you stand on Dexter, but just could give the Texans someone they just don't have, this freak mammoth of a human being who just moves better than most people at that size, and there's a lot of potential to mine there. So I think it's a worthwhile pick there at 65. Next is 66. I'm going to have the Cardinals take Joe Tippmann. I've been going interior offensive line in the second round. Here I just do it in the third to change it up a little bit. But Tippmann figures to be a nice center of the future for them, which is obviously an important position. Kyler Murray a little short, so once he's back out there, trying to keep a clean pocket up the middle for him to be able to get the best line of sight possible, but also be able to step up in the pocket, deliver a throw over the middle of the field. And we're going to come back to interior offensive line a little bit later on with the Cardinals. We get a couple picks here from the Denver Broncos, starting at 67. Let's go Matthew Bergeron. Nothing special. I'm starting to come around on him because he's just solid, stable. I feel like he can play right away. So it's like a third-round pick. This guy figures to be a just solid, capable NFL starter. Kind of like what I thought Nicholas Petit-Frere would be last year, maybe with a little less confidence in Petit-Frere versus what I have in Bergeron right now. Because Petit-Frere did have his struggles as a third-rounder, but Bergeron, I think, can be a plug-and-play starter at right tackle for Denver. And then the other spot, I'm going to go Clark Phillips III. As I was preparing this, I was kind of thinking, yeah, Rex Ryan, or it's going to be Vance Joseph, probably Rex Ryan, or, go back even a few weeks further than that. Like, it sounded like, Ejiro Evero, that was going to be a priority for them to keep him around. But zone-heavy, quarters-heavy defense, I think Clark Phillips III is a little bit better of a fit. Vance Joseph, it's more man-heavy. Maybe this isn't the best fit for him, but nonetheless, Ronald Darby makes a lot of sense to be a cut candidate, save some money against the cap, so Clark Phillips could certainly be a guy you plug and play as a starter. If it's not him here, Kai Blue Kelly, DJ Turner, Julius Brandt, Eli Rick, a lot of different corners you could go with here in a loaded corner class. Rams then at 69. Let's go Luke Weipler. I think a perfect fit for that offensive line. He's a zone blocking center. He's only about 300 pounds, but he can get out and block. He moves well for that size. And the Rams desperately need some upgrades there across the interior offensive line. I've had them make this pick in the second round, so chance to get it at 69 is certainly nice. Then we get to the Raiders at 70. Let's go Eli Ricks. A guy whose talent, round 1 type of stuff. When we've gotten to see him at LSU and Alabama, which I think that speaks volumes. This guy has played at 2 of the top 3 DBUs candidates out there. The only one he was missing was Ohio State. But nonetheless, trying to give Patrick Graham a fair shake here, and they could definitely use an upgrade there on the outside. So, yeah, he's had some hard time seeing the field, both with injuries and then reports where he's a little late seeing the field this year at Alabama because of a hard time learning the playbook. Certainly a little bit of a concern there, but for a team that's desperate for an upgraded corner, I think it's worth taking the shot, taking the flyer here at 70. And we've got edge, linebacker, corner. Ask me where I think the Raiders can get better. I think I've made it pretty clear here in this mock. Next up, the Saints. I'm going to go Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I still think that they're prioritizing edge, even if they do get a guy like a Kalijah Kancey in round 2. But FAU figures to be a nice DPR, can figure to be that passing downs type of dude. And they let Peyton Turner and Cam Jordan be the every down edge rushers. This is a team that prioritizes having 3 edge guys. So I think Felix Anudike-Uzomah figures as a really nice add. And you can kind of work him into a role where He's only seeing, passing down work. You're not having to worry about potential liabilities of him being a run stopper. He's a little bit smaller, 6'2", a little bit slight. But maybe in a couple years' time, he develops there, and maybe he's your long-term Cam Jordan replacement, which is something we're always kind of talking about with the Saints. Like, when is Cam Jordan going to kick? And who's going to be that replacement once that day happens and once that day comes? So FAU could be both those things, an immediate DPR, but also maybe a long-term starter edge and maybe a Cam Jordan replacement for the Saints. Next, the Tennessee Titans. I kind of teased this last week, but it wasn't the pick that I ended up making because I'm an idiot and I just overlooked it. I'm going to go Antonio Mafi here. So we've added Paris Johnson Jr., an upgrade there at left tackle, and Antonio Mafi. Depending on how your offensive line, rankings play out and what scheme you're preparing for, he could be a lot lower, he could be a lot higher, but for a power blocking scheme, I think he should be relatively high because this dude is a mauler and he's a force in the run game, which perfectly fits with what Tennessee's trying to do. So have him move people there at left guard. We've already given Paris Johnson Jr. that left tackle job. That seems like a perfect, left side of the offensive line for Derrick Henry to run behind. Certainly a lot better than what Dennis Daly and Aaron Brewer were doing last year. So I think you got two upgrades there across the offensive line, and with the left tackle, and then Mafi here is a mauler in the run game. We're kind of building into that identity. We're going to run the ball. Derrick Henry is the Tennessee Titans. But then with Jalen Hyatt, our second-round pick, we're building that contingency, that counter on top of it. Let Hyatt get behind defenses. We're all kind of starting to have it build and come together for that Titans offense. So it's Titans offensive heavy, but I would love to see them go that route. Then we get back to Houston. I'm going to stick on the interior offensive line. I'm going to go Jarrett Patterson. Figure he's a really solid starter at either center or right guard right away, where the Texans can certainly get better and certainly could get an upgrade. So just a solid player. Nothing special about Patterson that says, wow, this guy's got to go high. He's got to go early in the draft. No, not a crazy athlete, just a solid, good football player that I think can be a plug-and-play interior offensive line upgrade, which the Texans are certainly looking for. Next up, the New York Jets. I'm going to go to the safety room here and add Jordan Battle. We talked about linebacker yesterday. Linebacker and safety to me are like the two spots where the Jets could get better. So adding Battle in with a rotation of him, Jordan Whitehead, is really exciting to me. I would figure, we'll see once we get to Indy. Like, I think Battle's not a bad athlete, but I could see where his 40 leaves a little to be desired. So because of that, maybe it's Whitehead as the free safety, and then Battle becomes the box guy. But you can also run split safety looks on these guys, and hey, maybe Battle's 40 times better than anticipated, and he can run some over-the-top stuff. But he definitely gives me a ton of Xavier McKinney vibes. You don't want a helmet scout, but not a high-end athlete, just plays the game at a high level, understands the position, knows what he should be doing, and that's kind of what Battle brings to the table, just like McKinney, and I like Xavier McKinney in the NFL. So yeah, if I'm the Jets and I can add Jordan Battle, I would jump on it. Next is the Atlanta Falcons. We went edge, and we had a little bit of a luxury pick in yesterday's video with tight end. But here at 75, we're going to address a serious need. Garrett Williams, a guy that, who knows? If he doesn't get hurt against Notre Dame and he has that late season breakout, there'd be a bunch of people like myself saying, hey, well, we figured he could have that breakout season, and now we saw it. But because he got hurt, we didn't get to actually see whether it would happen or not. So, but I do think there was a lot of hype about a potential breakout season for Garrett Williams for a reason. I think he's going to test well at the combine, has solid size for 6 foot, right around 190 pounds. And for Atlanta, it's like, who's that long-term number 2 corner opposite of A.J. Terrell? I think it's worth taking a shot on Garrett Williams here at 75. See if you can get that break out of him, because Terrell, if it all works out, that's a really, really solid outside corner duo. Maybe you bring back Isaiah Oliver to continue playing the nickel. All of a sudden, that corner room is looking really solid. Then we get to the New England Patriots. I'm actually going to stick at the corner position. Give him Jalen Jones, who I think traditionally fits with what Bill Belichick has wanted to do, wants that man press type of corner. But if he still plays, more zone heavy stuff, which he has over the last couple of years, I still think Jalen Jones fits into that. Also, he's a corner last name Jones, and Bill Belichick's drafted Marcus Jones, Jonathan Jones, Jack Jones. Yeah, just he meets the criteria there. Jokes aside, though, I do think he actually fits with what Bill Belichick has typically wanted to do, has a good size, figures to test pretty well at Indy, and I think as a round 3 pick, I think that aligns with his value. So solid pick there for the Patriots. Then we get to the Miami Dolphins. We gave him a tight end yesterday. Now we give him Devin Achane, as if this offense needed more speed. Let me get him the guy that's running like a 10-1 100-meter dash for the Texas A&M indoor and outdoor track and field team, because that is bananas. Mike McDaniel's going to have it blocked up. The blocking scheme is crazy. It's kind of OP, honestly. And just let him have this speed demon hit the holes and go. Also another guy who I think could be a check down option. We talked about it at length yesterday. Kincaid being the counter for linebackers dropping so far back and taking away that timing throw 20 yards down the field to Tua and Tyreek Hill. I think Achane can do a lot of the same stuff, and he's so fast that once the ball's in his hand, you better get to him quick, because he can turn a big play out of nothing really quick. So, another explosive weapon to an offense that doesn't really need it, but man, it's scary to think about Miami if they added an Achane into the mix, plus a Dalton Kincaid, which we gave him yesterday. Then we get to the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to go Chris Smith here. This is kind of my Adrian Amos leaving in free agency contingency. If that happens, figures to be the free safety of the future. Darnell Savage continues to be the box guy. But even if they keep Amos, I think you could work a 3-safety set with, Smith and Amos kind of doing the over-the-top stuff, and then Darnell Savage becomes your big nickel guy, kind of works down in that strong safety nickel hybrid role. I'd love to see that. I think he could thrive in that role. But one way or another, I think Chris Smith brings a lot of value to Green Bay, so I'd love to see this pick there at 78. Just it was a really good player for the best defense in college football the last 2 years, and he was a big reason why. Indianapolis then at 79. Let's go Isaiah Foskey. They've been looking for that edge rush position to be figured out for a while now. Kwity Paye's a nice player, good run defender, really awesome athlete, but hasn't really taken that step forward as a pass rusher, unfortunately. So let's continue to take swings of the bat. Foskey, it can be exciting, but also kind of frustrating when you look at it because he doesn't have like this trump card. He doesn't have like Will McDonald. He's going to win with speed. He's going to be able to beat you on the outside shoulder if you're a tackle. Foskey's like, yeah, he's got good size, good strength, okay get off, couple moves, but nothing crazy. Like he doesn't have that number one thing that makes him a killer, So for some people, that's going to be like, okay, well, this guy's solid, well-rounded. He can help us in a variety of ways right away. And other people are going to be like, well, he doesn't have that move. How do I know he's going to win? How do I know I'm going to get immediate production from him? So it comes down to where you stand on that. But I think for the Colts, it's worthwhile adding that other edge rush spot. Minimum, he becomes a solid run defender on the other end of the D-line opposite of Kwity Paye, which that in itself brings some value to the table. Next up, the Pittsburgh Steelers at 80. I'm actually going to go wide receiver. I have not gone wide out for Pittsburgh, but I think if they do it, it's going to be on day 2. And if Pittsburgh drafts a wide receiver on day 2, everybody's ears should be perked up because, Deontay Johnson's a 3rd-round pick. George Pickens is a 2nd-round pick. Going back even further than that, Calvin Austin, also day 3 pick last year, which maybe he becomes the slot wide receiver, but I don't know. Parker Washington could do the same stuff, but even further than that, Emmanuel Sanders, Antonio Brown's a day 3 pick. Mike Wallace, I think, either 3rd-rounder or a day 3 guy. Like Pittsburgh, for whatever reason, has just always been able to draft wide receivers, which I love that about them. So if they drafted Parker Washington here, I would be ready to make his stamp for the next Pro Bowl. I don't know what it is, but Pittsburgh's got that track record. And I think he could work the slot, a solid athlete, nothing crazy, nothing that's got to have this guy early, but good athlete, good route runner, has the sneaky ability to win at the catch point, some nice contested catch skills, ability to go up and get it. So I like all that. It feels like a nice guy to play on top of what Deontay Johnson brings as, speed, quick, get the ball into his hands, pretty quick kind of guy. Let him be a yards after the catch weapon. Maybe some overlap with George Pickens, who's a contested catch freak. And please, Matt Canada, if I could have one thing, if you can give me one thing next year, George Pickens needs to be averaging 8+ targets a game. None of this, 4 or 5 targets a week. No. Feed George Pickens. Please, 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 please give me that next year, Matt Canada. Anyways, Parker Washington could be a really interesting slot wide receiver for Pittsburgh. But again, it comes down to where you think Calvin Austin fits into the picture. Next up, the Detroit Lions at pick 81. We go Emil Ekiyor. You have Big V miss all of last year, so no guarantee he is what he had been in a couple of years before that. Ekiyor could be your upgraded right guard, or Big V comes back healthy. They're excited about him, and maybe Ekiyor can flip over to play left guard and be a replacement for Jonah Jackson, who's been kind of middle of the road at best. Or he sits for a year and becomes a starter for either one of the two based on their contract situations, how that plays out. So do you think guard is something that the Lions are going to look to address in rounds 3 or round 4? So I think Ekiyor here provides some solid value at 81. Next to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm going to go Adetomiwa Adebawore, edge rusher out of Northwestern that looked pretty good at the Senior Bowl. 6'2", I'm figuring he's edge only, but he did line up across the entire defensive line pretty much for Northwestern. But I think gives you a really solid trio right away with Shaq Barrett coming off the Achilles injury. Hopefully he comes back at 100%. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who I do think and I'm anticipating he takes a step forward in a big way in year 3. And then Adetomiwa Adebawore, because of his size, maybe he's DPR right away. But that could line up timeline-wise, kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier on, where the Saints could draft Felix and DK Uzama. Maybe he becomes a Cam Jordan replacement. Maybe Adetomiwa Adebawore becomes a Shaq Barrett replacement in a couple years' time. So I think it works right now for the immediate need, but also long-term could give you that guy who's a full-time starter opposite of Tryon-Shoyinka. Anyways, let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks at pick 83. That's where I'm going to go linebacker DeMarvin Overshown. Man, he is such a multiple ball of clay. I love Overshown. He's definitely one of my guys. Safety turn linebacker, 6'4", 240 pounds, can fly around the field. This year, fixed up the missed tackle concerns that he had over the prior years at Texas. Still needs to learn how to fill a run lane, whatnot. So there's still plenty of things he needs to learn. But if he's cleaning up his tackling, that signals to me that he's starting to figure it out. And again, safety turn linebacker, him paired up with Jordan Brooks, these two uber athletic guys who can fly all over the field. yeah, I'm here for that pairing. And, it's just another step trying to solidify that front seven for Seattle. We're going to be a better team in the front seven. We're going to stop the run at a higher level, and also a team that traditionally has run a lot of zones. So Overshown's coverage ability and safety background can come in handy big time there. So love that fit. A little bit of a work in progress. May take a year or two, but man, if it hits, that's why Overshown is still, in preseason, he was a top 5 linebacker for me. He still is. I love what the upside presents for DeMarvin Overshown. Let me get back to the Miami Dolphins at 84. I'm going to go Julius Brents. Kind of thought about Riley Moss here. This, zone, nice size too, 6'1", right around 200 pounds. Played in a zone-heavy scheme at Iowa, but then at the Senior Bowl, looks good in the one-on-ones, which is inherently kind of man-driven. So thought about Moss here, but maybe 84 is a little early. Not a guy that a lot of people are talking about. Julius Brents is kind of similar. Not a lot of guys are talking about him, but how people talk about Devon Witherspoon and his ability to go make a play, make a tackle at the line of scrimmage, and he'll fly to the ball carrier. Brents does the same stuff. Like he is a willing tackler. No doubt about it. But also played at Iowa, so he's got comfortability playing in a zone-heavy scheme. Transfers to K-State, which mixes it pretty well between man and zone. So this is a guy who's played well at 2 different schools in 2 very distinct schemes and is a more than willing tackler and a pretty hard hitter when he wants to be. So I think he checks a lot of boxes. He's just a guy that hasn't really caught on just yet, but once he does, I think he'll be a hot name. And for Miami, Byron Jones would be a fantastic fit in that Vic Fangio scheme, but they cut him post-June 1. They saved like 10, maybe even $13 million if I'm remembering correctly. So he could certainly be on his way out. So that other starting outside corner spot opposite of Xavier Howard could be up for grabs. And I think Brents is good value there at 84. Next is the LA Chargers, who went wide receiver in round 1. Now I'm going to give them even more reinforcements with a pass catcher with Sam Laporta. Not a high-end blocker, not the next George Kittle or TJ Hawkinson come out of Iowa, but capable, fine, good enough. But a solid athlete, good pass catcher, sharp route runner. I think, with Gerald Everett getting close to 30, I think he turns 29, maybe even turns 30 through midway through next year. Donald Parham Jr. is a free agent. So long-term, it's a position of need, but also I think Laporta could give you an upgrade right now, too. So going into year 4, Justin Herbert, last year that we have him on a rookie contract. So how can we get cheap, right? Like get cheaper receiver, don't have to pay a tight end. That's ways you can cut corners, but also helps you right now by like loading up a ton of talent around Justin Herbert, which to figure out that defense and, if the OC change works and, Zay Flowers, Laporta hit, there's no reason this team, specifically with that offense, should not be in Super Bowl conversation. All right, next up, the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to go Darius Rush here, a guy that, maybe a little overlooked because of how good Cam Smith is, but actually 2-inch longer wingspan, a couple more picks this last year, so arm length and ball production are kind of there. So depending on what you weigh into your corner evaluations, Darius Rush is a sneaky, nice name to keep in the back of your mind for round 3, round 4 time once we get to that point in the NFL draft. But for the Ravens, Marcus Peters a free agent. I feel like Darius Rush could just be one of, just like a plug-and-play guy for them. I'd be interested to see if they keep Kyle Fuller around on a cheap contract. I know Kyle Hamilton was awesome in this like nickel corner, strong safety hybrid role. So they might just do that and opt to just add one more boundary guy. Darius Rush could be that. But I'd be interested to see if they could work out something with Fuller coming back on a cheap deal. But nonetheless, Rush, I think, would be an awesome value here at 86 and give him a guy that can start opposite of Marlon Humphrey. We're actually going to stick in the corner room here at 87. And I'm going to go DJ Turner here for Minnesota. You can also flip these picks as we've gone corner 3 of the last 4 spots. So it really just comes down to whatever your preference is in a corner and who you think is a little bit better than the other guy. But we're kind of splitting hairs there. But Michigan actually had a couple of really nice corners there and a guy who might go round 1 next year. But we'll save that for the way too early 2024 mock. But DJ Turner, really solid season, solid size, 6'1", 190. And I think this just kind of solidifies a nice trio of him, Cam Dantzler, and second year Andrew Booth Jr., who I did like a lot coming out of Clemson. And now it's just like if one of those 2 guys takes a step back or doesn't work out, DJ Turner can be the next guy up. Or if injuries come up, then DJ Turner's there to fill the hole. So do you think they can get better at corner? Turner here, I think, is solid value at 87. So we get faster in the middle of the field in the first round with a linebacker. Now we're addressing corner. I feel like we're kind of chipping away at those big needs that Vikings defense. Then we get to the Jags at 88. This might upset some Jags fans, but until I know what's happening with Evan Ingram, I'm gonna continue to look at tight end. And I think Tucker Kraft, kind of an interesting ad. I'd also, even if they keep Evan Ingram, I'd love to see them go more 2 tight end sets. Doug Peterson had a ton of success doing that in Philadelphia, so why not do the same thing in Jacksonville? It really creates some mismatch problems for defenses. Kraft's also an interesting player because right now he's like firmly my tight end 6, just because like the tape's awesome, but he looks like a guy playing against lower level competition, and it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. So I don't really know if he's going to be able to have a huge impact at the NFL level, but he might be worth taking that shot on because you look at his tape and it's like, oh my God, this guy's just running through people. He's bigger than everybody. He's making all these contested catches. This man's a tank to bring down. but he looks like he's playing against lower level competition. But the Jags, if it doesn't work out, if you get Evan Ingram back, then cool, you got Evan Ingram. And if it doesn't work out and you don't have Evan Ingram, then you're a year away from picking somebody up in free agency or in the draft all over again. So I think it's kind of worth taking the risk here once you get closer to the pick 90. This is where it's like, hey, we'll take a flyer on a guy like Tucker Kraft, and if it works, awesome. If not, then cool, we can address it next year. Lions then at pick 89, and we've now hit the point of the offseason where I'm going to start dreaming over what I can do with the Lions in that wide receiver room. They could bring back DJ Chark, and when we got to see him, I don't think he was bad. This big body, physical, contested catch guy that works down the field, works the vertical stuff. Could bring him back. Still in his mid-20s. I think he turns like 27 next year. But I'm going to opt to go wide receiver Rashee Rice here as kind of that physical 6'3" possession type, and have him be again that kind of X possession dude. James Williams works the outside, the vertical stuff, and has an abundance of over-the-top speed. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown is your volume slot wide receiver. To me, that's like a really fun trio of wide receivers and all relatively cheap right now. You're going to eventually have to pay ASB, but the other two guys are cheap right now and take advantage of that. So Rashee Rice, I think, is a really fun add. He's kind of the receiver that I'd like to see them add into the mix if they don't re-sign someone like a DJ Chark. And then Josh Reynolds becomes this pretty awesome wide receiver 4 who I think he's a good player and he can do a lot of different things. So as the fourth guy just filling in here and there, it becomes kind of a spicy ad and a spicy role for him. So let me know if you're a Lions fan. Like, when's too early to start thinking about wide receiver? Because, if Marvin Harrison Jr. was in this class, there's not a wide receiver I like in the top 10, but if Marvin Harrison Jr. was in this class, him at 6, it'd be hard to turn down. I would be all for it. But anyways, here in the third round, let me know, is that kind of where you're thinking for wide receiver for the Lions? Next, the Dallas Cowboys at pick 90. I'm going to give them Henry To'oTo'o. I think a really nice compliment if they can bring back Leighton Vander Esch. Vander Esch, good blitzer, solid athlete, can do a little bit more in coverage. To'oTo'o, not a phenomenal athlete, but instinctual, can wear the green dot right away too, which I think does bring value. Good run defender, fills the lanes at a high level, multi-year starter at Tennessee, then Alabama. So guy who's just ready to go right away, plenty of football under his belt, can be a plug-and-play guy on day one. So I think pairing him up with LVE, if they can get him back, is a really nice pairing for that off-ball linebacker spot. And also, it's another step forward to just keeping Micah Parsons all the time as an edge rusher, which obviously I would be all for. Then we get the Bills at 91. That's where we're going to have Sidney Brown come off the board. So as promised in round 1, I'm going to go kind of secondary heavy. And as I alluded to then, you're a good football team. Team's going to be passing to keep up, and they're going to be playing from behind, so they're going to be working through the air. So adding a corner and a safety in this year's class, to me, isn't out of the realm of possibilities. And let's say they do draft Ringo in the first round. Cool. Ringo, Elam kind of become the top 2 corners moving forward, with Dane Jackson kind of fitting in there. And then Christian Benford, let's say he does move to safety. Let's say they let Jordan Poyer walk. If you draft Sidney Brown, it's Benford, it's Micah Hyde, and it's Sidney Brown. That's a really nice safety trio. You can even do some big nickel stuff with Sidney Brown. But then you're also a year away from being like, okay, well, Micah Hyde is on the wrong side of 30 and making a lot of money. Could we move on from him and have Benford and Brown be the safety tandem of the future? So I think corner and safety are certainly in play, but if you're a Bills fan, is that like too much? Is that overkill? Would you rather see something else here in the third round or something else with what was on the board in the first round? Let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Anyways, let's move on to Cincinnati Bengals at 92. Kind of a similar thinking here. Zach Harrison can be a developmental edge. Bengals are going to be a team playing from ahead a lot. Teams are going to have to pass the ball, play from behind. So getting a Zach Harrison in that rotation, I think, is awesome. And maybe in a year's time could be a replacement to Sam Hubbard, another Ohio State guy staying in state. Could be just the third guy to replace, third guy in the rotation replacing Cam Sample or Joseph Osai. Both those guys drafted in 2021 out of Tulane and Texas, respectively. But Zach Harrison's going to test well at the combine, has an NFL frame, has NFL strength. It just doesn't have bend. But I think once you get to the NFL level, if he's a power pass rush specialist, that gives him a role right away that the Bengals can kind of take advantage of against tackles that maybe struggle against that type of pass rusher. But also maybe in a year or two time, you really unlock what his potential has him potentially at. So love this fit, and it's also, hey, you're a good team. Continue to add a defensive line. Continue to add to the secondary. We went corner yesterday. Now we're going edge. Keep that strength at strength. Seattle is next up, and this is where we're going to have quarterback come off the board. And Hendon Hooker right now apparently is crushing the interview process. Apparently he was having teams ooh and ah over him at the Senior Bowl during all that sort of stuff. And I think at this point where we've gone edge, offensive line, D-line, offensive line, wide receiver, linebacker, we've gone trench heavy and then a little bit of a luxury pick with Kayshon Boutte. Hendon Hooker, depending on how this Geno Smith contract plays out, makes a lot of sense to me, where if it's just a tag for Geno, Hendon Hooker spends this year rehabbing, learning the offense, and then can take over with an offense that features 3 legit wide receivers, a good offensive line, a great running back, and he can just be a facilitator, floor general. Run the offense, get the ball out quick, let my awesome supporting cast do the legwork. Or even if it's like a 2-year contract for Geno Smith, or like a 3-year deal structured as 2, that could work for Hendon Hooker. Or it could be a 2-year contract structured as a 1-year contract with the flexibility, if he plays well, to stick with him for another year. I think this is something worth exploring, and especially here at 83 after all those other picks we've made. We've addressed just about every other hole this team has. So going quarterback here, taking a flyer, at worst, he becomes a competent backup of the future, which, if, God forbid, something happened to Geno Smith, you would be happy to have Hendon Hooker as your backup. And if he didn't get hurt, he could be in the second-round conversation. So you're getting good value here. I personally have Tanner McKee ranked higher, and we're going to have McKee come off the board here in just a little bit. Philadelphia at 94. I'm going to give him Mike Morris. I kind of think of him as a nice power edge rushing replacement for Brandon Graham. I think he's a logical replacement there. So this is kind of a spot where he can kind of sit, learn, have a small role behind some of those more developed, more experienced edge rushers they have. Edge is a priority for Philadelphia, so it's kind of weird that we're waiting until the third round to address it. But I think Mike Morris could be a nice draft and stash and eventual starter in like 2 years' time for the Eagles. So I like that pick a lot. Then we get to Kansas City at 95. I'm going to go Jalen Duncan here. I'm starting to think they're going to franchise tag Orlando Brown Jr. once more, and part of that is because of my mindset. I don't ever want to go into an offseason where I need to replace more than 2 offensive linemen. 2 is hard to do, but I can do it, and I definitely don't want to replace 2 tackles. So I think the Chiefs are going to opt to give the franchise tag to Orlando Brown Jr. again, not have to worry about left tackle for another season. And then Jalen Duncan here could be your Andrew Wiley, Lucas Niang upgrade. High-end athlete, looks like and has some traits to be a first-round tackle. That's why Todd McShay snuck him to the first round at his mock that we reacted to earlier this week. If you missed it, definitely go back and check it out. But that's why he could sneak in there. But to me, he just doesn't play like it. So as a third-rounder, it's like, yeah, he kind of plays like a third-rounder, but with first-round upside because of his athletic ability and his frame. So let's do it. Let's take a flyer here at 95, flip him over to right tackle, and hope that he's an upgrade over Wiley and Lucas Niang, who ultimately hasn't worked. And then next offseason, you try to find your Orlando Brown Jr. replacement or work out that long-term extension. So I think that's kind of my thinking here with the Chiefs at 95. Then we get to the Arizona Cardinals once more. I'm going to go interior offensive line, and actually mock draft database has even made Nick Broker into a guard. I do think he projects better as a guard versus a tackle, which is where he played at Ole Miss, but starting experience at Ole Miss figures to be a really nice plug-and-play left guard in this situation for the Cardinals. So we gave you a center earlier. We gave you a guard. I think this is a multi-year kind of retool. So going trench heavy, like I've said multiple times now, I think is the focus for Arizona. So I like them doubling down on interior offensive line on day 2. Next to the Washington Commanders, this is where I'm at McKee come off the board. I do think McKee's going to go day 2. If not, he's going to go very early day 3. To me, I think he's a guy who just had a terrible situation around him. Michael Wilson was not healthy enough. That was about the only other guy on that offense that you could argue is top 50 talent. The offensive line was putrid, not enough pass catchers. David Shaw's tenure kind of went stale. So I think at the NFL level, he'll be a better player. Where I don't see him going to Washington is because if it's going to be Sam Howell, it's going to be Sam Howell backed up by like Jacoby Brissett or Baker Mayfield. I don't think it's going to be Sam Howell and Tanner McKee. But if it is, then I'm totally here for it. And then, if it don't work out with Howell, I'd love to see what McKee looks like in an offense that decent offensive line and a lot of talent in the pass catching core. Tight end here is also interesting. So depending on if the board played it a little different, I don't really have a tight end right now that I love. This value at 97. Maybe Cameron Letu or Davis Allen. But yeah, I'll up for McKee here. I'll wait and see. But I am interested to see what Eric Bieniemy in that offense looks like. We're about to find out a whole lot about how much credit goes to Bieniemy, how much goes to Reed, which, I think both those guys deserve a ton of credit, as well as, Kansas City having the best quarterback in football. I think that goes a long way with Pat Mahomes. But now we're going to see what Bieniemy looks like kind of on his own. So I'm excited to see that. But like I said, tight end could also be interesting here because that tight end role was obviously something that Bieniemy had a lot of production coming from Kansas City. So maybe that's the place you go here instead of McKee. Anyway, let's move on to the Browns. Marvin Mims is a pick that I continue to love. Right now, I think a lot of people are talking about him as like a day 3 guy. I don't know. I'm thinking him somewhere in that 80 to 100 range. And here at 98, I think it's supreme value. Can play the slot right away for the Browns, but also could play outside. You could get some interesting, movement by moving Amari Cooper into the slot if you really wanted to. I think that'd be fun. Over the top speed to be a weapon, can work the underneath stuff, good player with the ball in his hands, really productive at Oklahoma going back, especially his first year with the Sooners. So I think a guy that brings a ton of value to Cleveland. And, kind of pivoting the conversation here, if they go wide receiver 42, that's going to be an interesting player long term. For the sake of where that offense might be in 3 years' time, because Amari Cooper's already a guy who's been traded twice. And who knows, when they get into contract talks, they might be like, yeah, we're not paying you that. We're going to trade you. Kind of like what Dallas did. or they might just be like, yeah, we'll stick with you right now, but yeah, we're not going to pay you that much money, so we're going to let you walk. So then at wide receiver, if they go that route at 42, like that person's about to become the wide receiver one if that does play out. So something that's interesting to think about. Not the route I decided to go with this week's mocks, but Marvin Mims at 98, great value, I think, as a wide receiver 3. Then you have Coop become your 1 that does everything. Donovan Peoples-Jones is the big body vertical guy, and then Mims does a little bit of everything underneath, over the top speed, and all doing it from the slot. So I love that pick there. Then we get to San Francisco. Let's go Karl Brooks. Give him that defensive lineman that I think they're going to be looking to replace both Charles Omenihu and Samson Ebukam, which also, side note, it is Ebukam, right? I've heard it said so many different ways. It feels like every person I hear say his name says it a little different. So I'm rolling with Ebukam, but let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. But nonetheless, I think both those guys could be gone. At worst, or at minimum, one of those two is gone. Whether it's Omenihu or Ebukam, and the one that leaves is probably going to Houston to play with D'Amico Ryan. But I think they could lose both those guys. So I think that 3-4 DN spot is something that they're looking to replace. Brooks looked like he could hold his own at the Senior Bowl. Pass rush upside, looks like he kind of fit the part as a run defender. Not a high-level guy, but wasn't getting pushed around, so he kind of showcased, yeah, I'm coming from a small school, but I can hang with guys who are going to be playing in the NFL, which was certainly a big boost to his stock. Then we get to the Giants. Let's go Nick Herbig here. I've been going Ivan Pace Jr. here, but these guys kind of fill the same role. These blitz-happy, pass rushing type of middle linebackers, which are perfect fits for what Wink Martindale is looking for. Decided to go Herbig just to get a different name in the mix. He's kind of a Zach Bond clone in a lot of ways, where Bond was this middle linebacker that could blitz really well. The Saints drafted him, and I liked him a ton coming out of Wisconsin. Unfortunately, though, after he got drafted, I never heard his name really ever talked about again. But the Saints used him at inside linebacker. They used him at edge. I think you could do kind of the same stuff here with Herbig, but ideally blitzing inside linebacker for Wink Martindale, the thing that he's looking for. I think Herbig would be a perfect fit for that need. Him or Ivan Pace Jr. would get an A from me. 2 picks for the San Francisco 49ers to kind of round us out. I went Kai Blue Kelly last week. Let's go Riley Moss here. I do like Riley Moss. This guy with really nice speed, really nice size, zone-heavy defense at Iowa, but looked good in the one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl, which, again, is inherently kind of man coverage based. So I think he could be a really nice add here. And at 101, I think that's really good value. But him or Kai Blue Kelly, I think would make a lot of sense, trying to get some reinforcements for that boundary corner spot. Then at 102, Brandon Joseph, this continues to be a pick that I really like to make. They brought Deshaun Gibson basically, I don't want to say out of retirement, but kind of sort of out of retirement. And I'd like to see them not have to do that again next season. So why don't we go ahead and find a guy who can be that long-term answer at the position for the 49ers. And Joseph is a guy who's cleaned up his tackling a ton, has a lot of speed, is a good over-the-top weapon. So adding another ball hawk to a defense that's already pretty crazy stout, man, that sounds like a lot of fun. But everybody, that is going to do it for the third round portion of this updated 2023 NFL mock draft. And as I scroll across the entire draft, be sure to let me know what you would grade your favorite team's haul, whether you liked it, loved it, or somewhere there in the middle. Love to hear your feedback down below. What picks did you like? Which ones did you not like? And which ones were you kind of meh on? What position groups would you rather see your favorite team address? Love to hear all you have to say about this mock draft down below in the comment section. Or even if it's not about your favorite team, who went too high? Who went too low? Who did I not have get drafted in the first 1 or 2 picks that maybe should have been? Love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. But hopefully you all enjoyed these videos. Like the videos if you did. Be sure to subscribe too if you are new and want to see more mock drafts in your future. But that is going to do it for me. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I am signing off.